Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Alejandro Kikuchi from Workana, sitting right now in our office in Kuala Lumpur, but we are not really using our offices that much nowadays, pandemic and all. And that's precisely the kind of thing that brings us here today. How do we keep on growing our businesses, our teams, while working remotely? The COVID-19 pandemic is bringing about unprecedented changes worldwide, and now more than ever, it's crucial for businesses to recalibrate. In that regard, Workana is working closely with many companies, helping them reliably hire and work with remote talent, be it full-timers or on-demand. And in our efforts to support companies in this journey, we are hosting these sessions in which industry leaders share their insights on the best ways to tackle this new normal. So far, we've had great conversations with a rich variety of businesses. Huge corporations such as Petronas and Reckitt Benckiser and Google, and also tech startups such as Fave and Naluri and Curlek. And now we have the opportunity to talk to Greg Meehan. He's the Chief Revenue Officer for Supahands. So let me add him to the broadcast. Hey, Greg, what's up?
Hey, I was waiting for a round of applause. Hey, man, how are you?
I'm sorry. Yeah. We are not allowed to have the audience here.
Okay, yeah, we'll put it in later. I'm very well. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure, and please, thank you for joining me in this conversation. It's going to be an interesting one.
Sure.
So first off, so everybody is on the same page, can you please share a little bit about Supahands and yourself and your role in the company?
Yeah, so as Alejandro mentioned, my name is Greg Meehan. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Supahands. My primary role over here is I take care of the people that take care of the revenue functions. So that's sales, marketing, business operations, and client success. As a business, Supahands, we do data labeling for machine learning. So we provide context to data. So we help large companies, small companies, mid-sized companies build machine learning models for applications in the real world. So we deal with a lot of data.
Right, and it's something so relevant nowadays. Machine learning, AI, it's in the mouth of everybody.
Right.
It's great that you guys are operating in that industry and helping businesses properly tackle that, right? With the learning part of the machines.
Yeah. So we essentially provide that foundational level. So without that kind of high quality training data, as they call it, nothing can really be built. And because we're at the early stages of the development of AI and machine learning, there's a lot of new stuff that's out there. So it's pretty unique for us. We get to explore and work with lots of different businesses on different use cases. So anywhere from retail to agriculture to robotics to consumer experience platforms on sentiment analysis, all this kind of cool stuff. And we work with global organizations as well. So we're seeing kind of how these trends are all shifting from the US to the UK to Europe and then over here into kind of China and Southeast Asia. So it's a really interesting business to be in, really interested.
That's great. And I love that the fact that you are in touch with businesses of all sizes and in many different industries, that is really a mind opener, right?
Yeah, it really is. So it's kind of interesting to see how businesses are positioning themselves kind of like this industry 4.0 thing. And it's interesting to see sort of the progression from not only different industries, but also different countries. And I think that's why I was really interested to have a chat about this. When we look at remote workers and onboarding remote teams and hiring remote workers as well, and this says they're calling it the new norm. I mean, us as a business, we were set up on a remote basis, right? We've got 14,000 people that kind of work for us on a contractual basis across Southeast Asia. I actually have a remote worker who's based out of Pakistan at the moment, who was actually onboarded during the pandemic. And all of our clients are based overseas. So there's kind of some parallels to be drawn in terms of, okay, when you look at onboarding and training new people coming on board and then onboarding new clients as well. And, we'll get onto it really, but it's all about relationships and bringing that human element to it.
Definitely, yeah. So yeah, precisely about that. And you just mentioned this new hire who was onboarded remotely. That's something I would love to dive into. particularly the technical aspects are definitely one side of that endeavor, but the cultural aspect. And there's a definition I like a lot about company culture. I like it because it's simple, and culture is how we do things around here. It's not a 5-line thing. It's very simple. So the definition, of course, culture is not a simple thing. So, and it's even more complicated when working from home and onboarding someone with whom you're not sharing the office space every day, right? So what kind of challenges have you been facing in that regard?
Oh man, many, I suppose. I think when we look at technology startups and new companies that are coming through, we have a young group of people together, right? And when you have a look at the culture that Supahands has built, it's very collaborative. So when people come into an office, you'll have water cooler chats and everyone kind of get it together, and just all of a sudden you'll go from 0 to 100 very quickly in terms of an idea. That's kind of been taken away, and that part of that creativity and that back and forth is missing. So it's been, in that sense, it's also challenging to migrate everyone to a remote basis, and then obviously bringing people together and keeping that bond strong for that collaboration. It's not perfect, right? I don't think anybody's mastered it to the point where it's, as personal opinion, I don't think anyone's mastered it as good as working remotely as you would in an office together, especially from a creativity point of view. From a productivity point of view, probably, because when you're working from home, less distractions, you can get stuff done very quickly. But bouncing ideas off people, like creativity, me personally, I found that was missing. Yeah. Onboarding people remotely, I think it has been said and talked about a lot, but when you think about empathy as well, I think empathy plays a huge role. And it's not just lip service nowadays. It's like, how are you bringing empathy to the table as an organization? How are you really trying to understand? How are you really trying to understand people? If your kids are coming in during an interview, or if a dog comes in, or there's a disturbance or something like that, how are you going to deal with that? It's really bring that human side of yourself. People say bring your authentic self to work, and how many companies truly acknowledge that and honor that. And I think right now it's really important, not only for in terms of growing a business, but in terms of taking care of people. Mental well-being, mental health, I think it's crucial right now. I mean, we're tribal people at the end of the day, human beings, right? And all of a sudden we're now, for want of a better word, segregated. We're kept at home, we're working from home. You got that element of loneliness, and there's quite a few YouTube videos around right now. It's like, okay, what's going to happen in the future when you think about everybody working from home, and that sense of loneliness and not belonging, and those missed out on water cooler chats, and that sense of, am I missing out, or the fear of missing out, FOMO, right? It's a real thing. It's a real thing, right? So
and
I think
to make matter, I'm sorry to cut you off. Just a quick comment. To make matters worse, that's combined with being in an actual pandemic and all the anxiety or worry that can bring about. Right? It's not only I'm not feeling that much part of this team I just joined, but also I'm worried because my uncle, those kinds of things. So it can be really stressing.
Yeah. I think just touching on that, say, well, how do you build that connection across teams, across countries, across time zones? And it's hard. It is really hard. And I kind of painting this picture of it's impossible, and there's so much negativity around it. But there's also a lot of beautiful things that can come from it as well, especially when you hire properly and people are made aware, and you can have those open conversations around, hey, this is really difficult for everybody, not just for newbies coming on board, but for execs and middle managers and seniors, because no one's been through this. So how are we supposed to cope with this? And then that's when you bring it back to that kind of human self. It's like, yeah, let's really strip it down here, and let's talk to each other like human beings. Like, what's going on? How are you feeling? How's everything going? And I think we'll probably touch on it a little bit later, but for yourself, Alejandro, when was the last time you either picked up the phone or somebody called you off the cuff, non-work related, and said, hey man, how's it going? How's things? What's been going on? We caught up very briefly before this, and can I talk about your new addition to the family and all this kind of stuff? And it's just having that kind of the human interaction, really getting to know people on that kind of personal level, which I think is kind of missed. But then when people are aware that everyone is feeling this way, it's not a siloed kind of thing. It's like, if you feel like, oh, I don't feel connected. Everyone else is. Like the managers feel like, well, I don't have control. So how do you balance that between micromanagement and not and sort of backing off, but so keeping tabs on tasks and milestones,
finding
and expectations.
a healthy balance between not breathing down everybody's necks all the time, but at the same time being there.
Present.
Right.
So how do you be present, but then also back away? So it's ever evolving at the moment because, you know, in Malaysia where we are, we've now entered the CMCO, which is, for those of you international, it's a conditional movement control order, which basically means that most people are going to be working from home, or there's limited people allowed in the office. And that was put in place for 1 month. And now we've had another 1 month extension. And that's going to go through to the 9th of December, if I'm not mistaken. But then, you know, what happens next? And we don't know. So there's that uncertainty behind what's going to happen. So I think one of the biggest things that, you know, that we did and we do is that constant communication. So when we first went into the lockdown, I think it was very, very strict. Right? You couldn't go out with one person to a car. There was police roadblocks everywhere. So it's like, okay, this is reality now. How we're going to deal with this? And the leadership team that we're here at Supahands getting together, say, okay, one-on-ones were already a thing. Like one-on-ones between the manager and the employee were already a thing.
How often do you do them? So
it's at least on every 2 weeks.
Okay.
But if somebody's new and coming on board, it's weekly. And if somebody's a new hire, so my BD team lead, Steve, shout out to Steve. Hey Steve, what's up, man? He's a legend. So he enjoys working with people. He enjoys watching people succeed. So he comes at it from that point of view, not from I'm a manager, I must do this. It's like, I'm working with this new person that's being brought on board on a remote basis. How are they going to be feeling about coming on board? There's going to be a lot of uncertainty. So he was having daily check-ins, and when we onboarded this person, there was a 2-week schedule set out in terms of these are the things that are expected to for you to pick up on and things to learn. And on top of that, there was interdepartmental meetings with the remote hire as well. So the remote person was introduced to the department leads. Now, if you're in a growing organization, then you could do group onboarding, for example. So then you're maximizing time. And then what you can do is when you're doing group onboarding, so for example, if somebody's coming on to sales, then they'll be introduced to operations, to the tech team, to engineering and product, but then they get to see who's at the kind of head of the table, so to speak. What we also did as well, our CEO, Mark, he does personal introductions. So he'll jump on for onboarding. So then you have that connection between, okay, this is the organization and this is also the CEO. And the CEO is taking time out of his schedule to talk to me and introduce himself and tell him the vision and mission of the business and why we're around and, you know, why we exist. So it's that personal connection. So the one-to-ones are very dependent on the frequency or how long somebody's actually been with the organization.
And would you do all of these measures, all of these meetings with the heads of other departments, with the CEO and whatnot, for example? Were you used to doing that before the pandemic, before the lockdowns, or is it something new?
So we were actually used to doing this before the lockdown. So this was, it kind of took place before. I think some of the changes that we really had when we moved into the lockdown was more the frequency of the catch-ups. So for example, with the onboarding, because you don't have that human interaction when we onboarded somebody remotely, there was the daily check-in. Okay, where are you up to, how are you progressing? And I think outlining from that point, we always had a buddy system in place. So when new people join, they're allocated somebody that's been with the business for a while, and they're normally outside of their department as well. So if you're in sales, it might be somebody from marketing. If you're hiring marketing, it might be somebody from tech. And it's somebody that you can basically just speak to on a casual basis about the company, how things are going, what their thoughts and feelings are around just anything in general. But so that buddy system was put in place, and then there's a cadence to those catch-ups as well, which are quite important.
I like it, and it's great that the buddy is someone from a different department, because then the new hire will definitely be in touch with people within their own team, right? So it's good to also give them that other point of view, in a sense.
Yeah. So with regards to the interdepartment kind of meetings as well, I know that our sales development rep team, they have regular catch-ups. They'll have a stay psyched it's called a stay psyched meeting on a Monday, and then a keeping psyched meeting on a Friday. And that meeting on a Monday will be, okay, what are the individual goals and challenges we want to set for ourselves individually and as a team, and then they work collectively towards those throughout the week, and then they check back in on them, and then use a sales CRM to see and measure how well they've done. So it's those constant check-ins and milestones which are keeping people motivated and keeping people together. And then throughout the week as well, there's self-solutioning. They're having those peer kind of get-togethers to see, okay, what's working, what's not working, how we're going to hit these targets.
All right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Now, there's definitely a difference when hiring someone with a certain level of seniority, right? Mm-hmm. Someone, who's already been in a couple of organizations, remote or not, someone who knows how, is familiar with the dynamics of a workplace. That's one thing. And then on the other hand, if we are talking about a young professional kind of just joining the workforce, early mid-20s, maybe it's a second job. What kind of differences or how are the challenges different when talking about these kinds of profiles?
Good question. So the person I've been speaking about just now was a junior, first job.
All right. Oh, first job. Okay. So yeah.
First job coming in. So how do you build that connection? It's a lot of that communication that's up front, right? We for that one in particular, we did a lot of pre-onboarding as well. Mm-hmm. All right. So even before the start date, we were talking to them about Supahands and weekly check-ins. We had a WhatsApp group created with the team lead and herself, just so when she was researching into the industry and how we do things, there was a lot of back and forth there. So already building that kind of communication and that connection, working apart. And so that was on the more junior level, that pre-onboarding. And I spoke to her the other day, and she said that really helped with the integration into the organization, because then you worry less about, what do I need to learn for this industry and this company, more about, okay, now I need to focus on building the connections and communication with the people that are in the business, because they've kind of done a lot of that pre-learning even before they come on board. So that pre-onboarding she found very powerful. On the flip side, when we look at how we're looking to expand Supahands, I mean, we've got a lot of clients based in the US, and eventually we'll have people on the ground within the US. And we've actually onboarded somebody on a referral partnership basis who is actually over there in the US right now. And so how do you bring this person on board on a remote basis?
With a huge time difference at that.
Huge time difference, integrating them with the company and the organization. So how do you balance all these things? And it was a similar process. So it was the interview process in terms of the culture fit and the competency and skills fit, and going through that over Zoom calls. And it was a collective Zoom call, not one-on-one. So he could actually speak to myself and the CEO and the COO, and really get a feel for the dynamics on the call. So, when we were on the call as well, it wasn't sort of two-way. It was myself and maybe 3 or 4 other people on a group chat, just sort of hashing things out and strategizing, and basically just seeing how we operate, and seeing, it brings a different dynamic. Right. If you ever see how myself and our CEO interact, it's very different to how maybe 2 normal people would interact. And so it's being able to see what we're all about as a culture, and how we talk to one another, and how we come up with different ideas. And then from there was the one-on-ones and the frequencies and the catch-ups and the communication. And we actually we recently, going into the pandemic, we onboarded a tool called Basecamp, which is basically a project management and workforce management tool for just communication, it's been incredible for us. So we can swap and share ideas and information.
Right, and you're touching on something that I think is really interesting. We use Asana, but same thing. It's for organizing tasks and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And this started a couple of months ago, so not that long ago, and quite well into the 2020 and the pandemic. Yes. We realized we needed to improve our async game. Basically, we need to be better at communicating in a asynchronous manner. So of course, it's not like we do want to stop meeting live, right, and having video call meetings, but they need to be more meaningful, useful, productive. Otherwise, Zoom fatigue is a reality, and if you spend your whole day doing this, it can be it can be tiring. Even though
Are
I'm
you trying
having
to
a
give me
great
some?
time.
Yeah, am I tiring you out right now? Do you want to take a break? Is that? I feel like you're telling me something.
I'll be back in 10. Yeah, no, you know what I mean, right? I mean, it can be a bit so. So and these kinds of tools are like your such as Basecamp, as you're mentioning, can be great at that, because you can collaborate, you can contribute to a project, iterate a simple email marketing piece, such as an example, and then make sure that when you do go into a meeting, it's not like everybody's fed up with meeting, but really, all right, I'm looking forward to seeing these guys, to discussing the project, and also how you're doing in general, right?
Yeah.
Did you introduce this Basecamp, the tool, long ago?
During the pandemic.
All right.
That's when we kind of brought it in. We were like, okay, we were looking at how we were managing things through the various different technologies that we have, and we built internally. It's like, I wonder if there's a better way. I wonder if there's something out there that can help us kind of bring like a Slack, direct communication, project management, workforce management solution all together into one place. And Suzanne, our co-founder, COO, she basically looked at Basecamp and was like, okay, this is pretty intuitive. It works pretty well, and it also allows us to collaborate with our clients, like within the chats and projects, right? So we've just kind of migrated everything into this one solution, which basically makes everything, as you mentioned, asynchronous, right? So you can get pings and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it replaces a phone call. So if there's any urgency, you just pick up the phone.
Of course.
But it's been, for us, it's been a really powerful tool. And it's really, really easy to use.
All right. And how's adoption? New tools always take some time to get people used to it and whatnot.
Surprisingly easy. Because once you get into it, it's very intuitive in terms of how it walks you through tutorials, and it's very simplistic to use. And so the adoption was, I found it was pretty quick, and then you saw how it's implemented across like sales and marketing and client success, because if you're starting what they call a campfire, which is an instant messenger, as soon as you get pings coming through, you can jump on, and that's kind of your first interaction with the software would be through an instant messenger kind of thing. And then if you want to set up some new documents and share ideas, then it just becomes so easy to do. Then it's just like, well, why would I use something else?
Right.
So right. So it's just pulling people in, and I felt adoption was widespread. It was quickly adopted.
All right. Well, I'm glad for you. That's great. So when it definitely, right, when it comes to for example, these new tools, and also the cultural aspect we were just discussing about how the dynamics of the different people in the team and the communications between them, or between teams work. How do you manage? You already touched a little bit on this regarding pre-onboarding, but how do you manage the expectations of a new hire coming in?
Wow, that is a good question. I think being clear. So with new hires coming in, what are they being hired to do? I think when new hires come in, how they're onboarded in terms of outlining expectations and being very clear with decision-making processes and tasks and milestones and to-do lists, and then having those frequent check-ins.
All right.
I think. I don't know what more can I say?
Yeah, no, but that's great. I mean, it's so you're definitely, it seems like you're really being thorough, even before day one with the person joining, right? You mentioned that you have the pre-onboarding process, so of course the person has already got a chance to grow acquainted with you guys before starting. Yeah. But even with those kinds of processes, sometimes we've seen this happen, and the idea the person joining has and the idea the hiring manager perhaps has should be completely aligned, right? But that's not always. It should be if things are done properly. But still, it's not up until the new person actually joins, and even sometime after that you start to really see that. So in that regard, I think the frequent check-ins, as you're mentioning, and even embracing new tools, I think, project management and work management tools are great for that, because then it's less susceptible to nuances. It's, reading there the progress of whatever idea or project, everybody's comments. It's quite explicit in a sense.
I think, going back to what you mentioned about expectations, and the expectations are, hey, you're new coming on board and we're going to be working remotely. In fact, I just had this conversation with Min, our client success guy. We're looking to hire a new client success person. And it's like, there's that anxiousness about hiring new people and bringing them into a tribe, remote or not. How do you make sure they give them the right tools and the right guidance, and the right purpose, and the right mission, and it's all digested and synced? At the end of the day, sometimes it's not, because people perceive things in different ways, especially virtually. It's like we would be having a very different conversation if we were in the same room together, because it's different energy, right? It just, I'm not saying I'm not joining it. I'm saying it'd just be different.
Definitely.
So I think in terms of the expectations, being clear with the person you're bringing on board, either junior or super senior or mid-level, it's like, hey, we're going through this new thing, and these are the processes we have right now, and these are my expectations right now. Talk to me, and I will tell you. I was like, we're going to do this wrong, and things aren't going to go well, and things are going to fall down, and processes are going to break, and the first thing you see that needs improving, or the first sign of this happening, pick up the phone and speak to me. My expectations, if you to call me and let me know that this isn't working out, or message me and tell me that this isn't working out. As soon as that happens, you can start to do something about it. And as a manager, the next step after that, if you immediately do something about it, that's when you can start to build that integrity and that bond with people working remotely. It's like, holy shit, like these guys are working remotely, but they're hearing me and listening to me and acting on it very quickly. We had a similar situation over here where things weren't going the best. I got a message through. We jumped on a call straight away, and I was on a phone call to the CEO within 5 minutes after that call, and we were coming up with a solution which we're going to roll out by the end of the month. So it's okay. Are you really walking the talk? And I think that's so important right now. You can't hide away from it. It's all, everyone's virtual, so it's like, okay, well, how can we build that connection with people? So in terms of just those expectations, the expectations is things are going to go wrong. Speak to me, and we'll fix it together. And I think that's the only thing you can really do. That's
the point. It needs to be acknowledged that this is challenging. This is hard. We are going to fail at times. Let's acknowledge that, own that, right? And be open. And we're messing this up. Let's raise your hand. Let's talk about it. The worst you can do is ignore the problems, right?
Oh man. Yeah, I think, when you say we're probably going to fail, we'll fail, but we'll fail together, and then we'll come up with a solution, we'll make it right, or we'll go in a different direction. It's not a siloed event. Generally, I think I posted about this on LinkedIn the other day, most disappointments occur when expectations aren't clear. So even if you think you've been clear, encourage the person you're speaking to ask those questions to clarify exactly what you mean. Okay, you say this, but this is what I'm going to do. Is this what your expectations are? Is this the outcome you're really looking for? And encouraging that. And that's when you have those frequent check-ins and people are doing exactly what they say they're going to do, then you can see things progressing very quickly. So they're the expectations, really. Ask me questions, make sure I'm clarifying, because I talk very quickly. And sometimes I think my message comes across really concise. It doesn't. I'm rambling now. It's like, okay, well, get to the point. I've got Marissa looking at me just here thinking, is this guy come on, get to the point.
Yeah. So, and that's particularly when someone joining the team, the experience can be overwhelming. In the span of 2 weeks, they meet 30 people, are exposed to 5 new tools, 15 new clients. It can be confusing.
Yeah. So I think one thing we've done really well in terms of that 2-week kind of onboarding and expectations is the checkbox. Okay, on Monday, this is what we've got planned out for you, and this is what you should learn by the end of the day. And these are some anticipated questions you're probably going to have. So even if you say, okay, you've got Trello, Slack, Zoom, Google Meet, Basecamp, Salesforce, Prospect.io, all these other tools, you need to learn this one right now. And then I'll show you why you need to learn this one. And then this one's next. And then this one's next. So it's a clear path to success, and those tasks are outlined. It's not perfect because people want to get their hands on straight away. So it's like, okay, one step at a time.
Yeah, definitely. And also what you were saying about the encouraging people to raise a hand if something is not working. Someone, I think it was Ben Horowitz, someone once said, you want bad news to travel fast, so you can address those issues, right? If you keep a culture of sweeping problems under the rug and not really trying to ignore the problems till they go away, of course they will not go away and they'll only grow. So that's also something we do a lot. Someone joining the team, one of the first things we tell them is, if you feel there could be a better way of doing something, or you find a problem, let us know. And because maybe we are aware of that and we can explain why we are still doing it that way, or maybe everybody missed it and you come with your fresh eyes and we can tackle it, and that's great.
Yeah, I think you touched on a really good point there in terms of feedback. So, our CEO Susie Ann, she put in place a feedback framework, and the feedback framework is not just how to give feedback, but it's also how to receive feedback. So, if you have a new person coming on board on a junior level, how do you give feedback to like a CRO? Like, how is he going to operate? Like, how should I give that feedback, and what are the expectations in terms of how he's going to react? But everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet. I know how feedback is going to be given to me, and this person know how feedback is going to be received. So if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, Greg, I don't like how you did this," I get that quite often, then they know that the feedback from me is good, or that my reaction to that will be, "Okay, how can we do this better?" Not blow up and all that kind of stuff. And once it starts repeating itself, feedback is given, critical or good or whatever it is. This is how the leadership team react, and this is what happens next, and this is how we solution. That's incredibly important, because it's seen to the outside world like bad feedback was given, and then good feedback or good reactions were had, and this is how we came to a solution. So getting people to know how feedback should be given, should be received.
I like that. So this framework your co-founder created for giving and receiving feedback, what form does it take within your company? Is it a document everybody has access to? Is it okay?
Correct. Yeah. So it's a Google slide set of documents, and it outlines sort of the ways to give feedback, and the context and timelines, and the immediacy and the frequency of the feedback. So it's generally verbally, but there's a way that we can provide it on a written form as well. There's a way you can request feedback through a simple Google form, or give feedback in the same way. Because people like to receive feedback in different ways, and will react differently in different ways. So we've also put together these what we call the baseball cards. So in terms of, I have one, and the whole company has one each, in terms of who they are as a person, their Myers-Briggs, their Enneagram, all this kind of stuff, so people know how they can interact with one another and what their expectations are.
All right, that's great. I think keeping such documents to communicate in a clear way how things are done, cultural aspects of your company, right, is a great way, because otherwise it might take 3 months, 6 months, who knows how long, for the new hire to, this is how I'm supposed to bring, feedback up to or this is how I'm expected to react when learning through trial and error and experience. And that's still going to happen. But if you can kind of streamline it a little bit with, we do that as well. We don't have a specific one for feedback. Maybe we should. I like it.
Honestly, it's perfect. There's a few reasons behind it. One, if you're shown how to give feedback, and you're shown how to receive feedback. If, for example, you came to me and gave me some feedback, and it was, 8:30 on a Tuesday morning, and I blow up for some reason, your immediate reaction is, "Hey, Greg's not supposed to react like this. I wonder if you're okay." Because that's generally not how we operate. So it's not like, "Hey, Greg's being a dick." It's, something's happened for him to react this way, and I wonder what it is. So, and then it engages in that conversation. It's like, hey, generally when we give,
and it's a completely different thing.
Exactly.
Instead of saying, "Whoa,"
the dynamics of the conversation completely changes.
Right.
I think it's easy to talk about when you're not in kind of those high stress situations, and it's difficult to execute when you are. And I think bringing it all together, and having that empathy, and really trying to understand where somebody's coming from is really important. And I think when you look at Stephen Covey's 7 Habits and Habit 5, first seek to understand. If you live that as a principle, it'll really help you go a long way, especially now.
Right.
I just want to touch on something else as well in terms of what we've implemented. I mean, we've always had it. It's not sort of pandemic specific, but in terms of playbooks. So we have sort of Supahands as a company onboarding playbook. We've got a sales onboarding playbook, everything like how to operate as a salesperson. We've got the same for our business operations team, the same for our client success team, the same for the marketing team as well. So everything about that department, the people in it, how they operate, the principles and values they live by, how they make decisions, it's all contained in this one document. It's a pretty thick document depending on the department, and it's not to be digested in the whole in like one day, but it's a thing you can go back to as a frame of reference. Yeah.
Right. That's great. I think what you're touching on basically is how can we make some sort of embodiment of the culture, right? So you have the frameworks in some Google Slides, you have these playbooks, so then there's still going to be the live through it and learn by doing this kind of thing. That's unavoidable, and it's healthy to have, of course, as well. But for what you're telling me, you augment that with formal documentation in a sense, and I think that's great. It helps you, have more of a solid.
It makes hard conversations easier. If somebody messes something up, and it's like, hey, we don't operate that way, or you see if an interaction is happening, it's like, okay, this is a very strange dynamic, the way these people are debating or arguing. It's like, okay, this is not how we operate. This is it's documented here how we go about things and how we do things. So it's a very quick way to reference it, and then it takes out the kind of, well, Greg's just being this way, or whoever's just being this way because maybe they don't like me that much, or they've got it in for me if you have internal politics, not what we do over here. But then you could just refer back to it as the document. This is the principle we live by, and this is how we're leading the company, and it's written down. It's not about you or your character. This is just about how we operate as an organization. And let me move a bit. Okay, this guy here, this is Bruce. This is one of our company values. So when we've got Bruce and Sally, and we have like a red panda and 5UP4, and they all represent a different value for the business. And then it's like, okay, well, how do we operate as a person? Bruce represents courage, for example. So it's like, okay, well, when you approach a task, for example, if I'm doing something like this and I don't like public speaking, it's like, okay, I've got to put my Bruce pants on now. I've got to be courageous, and I've got to step out, and this is how I'm gonna do things. So then it becomes one of those things that you can talk about.
All right, that's great. So, kind of summing up a few of the tools or processes you guys have for pulling off working remotely and onboarding new people remotely. We've mentioned a buddy system, right? Anybody coming in has a buddy from a different department.
Yep.
Helping them. How long do that? And that's precisely a question we have here by Sierra. So it goes right to she's saying, she's asking, for how long does a newbie shadowing someone senior in the company turns out to be fruitful 2 ways for the company? Which, I could maybe sum up in, how long do you keep that buddy tied to the new hire for?
So that can be a conversation between the two people. I mean, it's there for the new person as well, and it's a framework and a guideline for people to do this and start to build those connections internally. The buddy system that we put together is spanned across 12 months, and it started with more frequent catch-ups in the early stages, spread out over to once a month and then potentially once a quarter, and then the frequency after that, depending on the nature of that kind of connection, right? People might move on, or they might outgrow that person, or they might have another buddy that they get more close with. But the idea is to, when you first start out as a newbie, who do I speak to? And then I go to Alejandro because I can call him and I can text him and I can WhatsApp, whatever it might be. But then you might grow in different ways, or you might say, okay, well, thanks for everything you've done. Maybe we can just catch up on a fairly informal or irregular basis. So it's very specific. It's not like a hard and fast rule, so to speak. It's there in the initial, so that when people come on board, they can feel taken care of and they know who they can actually go to and have a conversation with.
All right, perfect. So that's definitely one solid, valuable piece of advice to implement some sort of buddy system, particularly relevant if onboarding someone remotely.
Yeah, and actually, can I just throw in? Look, I don't know if you're going to post this with like my contact details or anything like that, but in terms of the buddy system we put together, I'm more than happy to share it out. Just shoot me an email if you want, and I can maybe remove any confidential information. But I'm more than happy to share it if it provides value to whatever you're doing internally. In fact, anything.
Right.
I can speak to our COO, like the feedback framework or the one-to-one framework that we actually use based on the $1 trillion coach or anything like that. I'm more than happy to share it. Just have to remove some confidential.
That's perfect. Yes, count me in. I'll definitely want to take a look at.
I'll have to charge you.
Well, all right, we can figure something out. But that's great. I mean, and of course, that's of course one of the purposes, one of the reasons behind doing these kinds of things, to be able to share these experiences. And hey, this is working out for us. This is not. We recommend, and have that. So all right. Yeah. So buddy system is one. You also mentioned Basecamp and be able to collaborate asynchronously. That's also been helping you guys out. You also mentioned one-on-one meetings as an additional tool, right? And maybe the frequency can vary from up to 2 weeks or something more frequent if somebody's new. Yeah. So I'm trying to sum up, all of these frameworks, processes, methodologies you have to ensure that the new hire is, well, successful. That's what we want, right? We don't want to hire someone and seeing that person leave us 3 months afterwards. We want them, we want everybody to. So that's the thing, right? You also have different documentation, a framework, for example, for providing and receiving feedback. You also mentioned the playbooks that you have one for each department. And all right, that's great. So yeah, I'm trying to sum this up kind of as advice for other business leaders out there. Yeah, anything else you'd like to touch on in that regard? Something we're missing, perhaps?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. To be honest, I think just having that frequent interaction. So that the buddy system, the one-to-ones. I think within those one-to-ones, it's not just about how well are you performing. Within those one-to-ones, it's where do you want to go with your career, personal life, and goal setting and target setting. So how do you drive purpose both within the organization and how to give them a bigger purpose outside of that? So it doesn't need to be one-dimensional in that sense. I think as a manager or a leader, me personally, I have skip level meetings on a weekly basis whereby I speak to not my direct reports, but the ones after that to get frontline feedback. So skip level meetings are really important, just so you can have that interaction and keep a feel for what's happening on the front lines. I do that once a week, and I think phone calls as well.
Okay, just in case people watching are not familiar with the term, a skip level meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, is a case in which you, for example, as a CRO, would have a meeting with someone not reporting directly to you, right? But reporting to someone who in turn reports to you.
Yes.
Or even more levels. I don't know, but
yes, correct. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, and I think that's great. As you're saying, it gets you a feel. Otherwise, you can kind of. I've seen it happen. You kind of live in the higher levels side of things, just looking at reports and dashboards and getting the direct feedback. So no, this client told me precisely this. It's not just a stat in a pie chart. They told me this phrase. So take a look at the email, and then you realize, maybe you find something there.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
I think, anything else to add? No, I think. Just talking to people.
It's been I mean, this has been really, really insightful, and it's great, as mentioned, and it's the reason why we do this. It's great to see how other companies that are doing well, of course, it's very interesting to see. Well, this pandemic can be really, really challenging and frustrating at times, and definitely one key takeaway is that the first step is to acknowledge that, right? I think you mentioned it at first, and you mentioned it a couple more times throughout. The first thing we need to do is acknowledge this. We are all in the same boat. This is not the greatest of situations to be in, locked up at homes and, worried about health and all of that. But there's definitely many things that there's some sort of upside to this. These kinds of tools, frameworks, and processes are definitely for the good, for the better.
For sure.
Definitely. All right, Greg. Again, this has been very, very insightful. I thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for having
everybody
me.
watching, and everybody watching, stay tuned on our LinkedIn pages, both for Supahands and Workana. We'll be sharing some summaries and quotes and insights from this throughout the next weeks. And Greg, you and I, if lockdown and whatnot permits it, let's catch up in person, hopefully soon.
At a distance. Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely.
We'll keep our distance, of course, but yeah. All right, everybody. I'm Greg. Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye-bye.